Hello, welcome to History 102, Test 2 review. We'll review the test questions and remind ourselves of the important topics. Question number 1, analyze the causes of World War I. In our lecture on World War I, we want to focus on this slide right here. Imperialism, militarism, alliance system, and nationalism. What you can do is you can divide it up into paragraphs and talk about each one and how it affected or developed the cause of World War I. Imperialism, you have European countries competing for colonies, mainly in Africa. What keeps them from going to war outright is they have the Berlin Conference in 1883 to carve up Africa to kind of, hey, you get this part of Africa, you get that part. Militarism, this is a big part of one of the causes of World War I. Germany and the UK get into a naval arms race. They build up their navies. You may want to mention the new naval vessel that is developed. U-boats or submarines. And so I'll be looking for that. You know, what's the new technology that they're developing? And it's U-boats, submarines. The alliance system, you have their teams forming again. You can mention, previously during the last century, you had the concert of Europe, right, where the big powers of Europe, instead of dividing up into teams, work together to maintain a balance of power. Well, by the 19-teens, you have an alliance system is formed. Europe is divided up into teams again, with the UK, the British, French, and Russians on one side, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire on the other. And so once war breaks out, not even before war breaks out, in the summer before war breaks out, you have this alliance system getting into high gear, right? Then nationalism, the main, kind of the main cause for historians is, Serbian nationalism. The Serbs had their own country again. There was tiny little Serbia, but they wanted a greater Serbia. There was land in the Austrian-Hungarian Empire that they wanted to be. There were Serbs living in the Austrian-Hungarian Empire that they wanted to be in Serbia, and so you have nationalistic tendencies or national pride wanting people to come back to be in a greater Serbia. So that's going to be a main cause. You can talk about the spark. So the shooting of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, that's the spark. You had all these causes. They alone, if you notice, they weren't causing a war yet. You needed a reason or an excuse, and the reason or the excuse is the assassination of Franz Ferdinand I of Austria-Hungary. Okay, so you can kind of review that. The second question, describe how the United States mobilized society during World War I. So I focused on this slide. There are others, and you can look up other items and kind of go over how the U.S. planned or prepared for World War I. The draft, Selective Service Act, the War Industries Board, where the U.S. government steps in and starts telling, companies what to make and who to make it for, right? During World War I, there's rubber shortages, like for tires in the U.S. Because the government requisitioned factories to start building rubber tires for the military. You have examples like that. Committee on Public Information, that's a big one. Restrictions on freedom of speech. Committee on Public Information, we call it propaganda. But what is, what's the U.S. government trying to shape the media, trying to control the media, and the media going along with it. Daylight savings time, and there's some others. The U.S. Food Administration, you can talk about food stamps. So during World War I, everyone got a ration book with you can buy this many eggs and this many milk. So you can talk about U.S. policy during that. The next question I remember from just looking at it a minute ago is Wilson's 14 points. I keep coming back and forth there. Okay, there we go. Gold Wilson's 14 points right here. The first thing I want to make sure you mention is make sure you discuss the ideological point of view of the 14 points. What is the purpose of the 14 points? For Wilson, is it just peace? He wants a just peace. He wants, what can we do? What can we do as nations? Progressives like to talk about the global community. What can we do to avert war? And remember, I talked about this in class where, for Woodrow Wilson, if everyone was just a capitalist democracy, a capitalist liberal democracy, and traded freely with each other, there wouldn't be war because we'd be too busy trading with each other, and we'd have the League of Nations to go over disputes, right? And so for Wilson, you want to make sure you talk about his ideology. It's utopian in a way, right? This idea that if everyone's just like us, things could be okay. And then what you want to do is you don't have to talk about all 14 points. That would be a 10-page paper. Just pick a couple and elaborate on. There's some that talk about disarmament. There's some that talk about specific national aspirations for various people, like the Serbs. And then the biggest one, the most popular one, obviously would be the League of Nations, an organization to keep the peace. So that's really important. Next, what are 3 ways American society changed during the 20s? So that's one question. I give different prompts. Not that I'm asking 3 questions, but what are some changes in American society in the 20s? You can talk about prohibition. You can talk about the development of organized crime. You can talk about flappers, the Victorian idea of womanhood and flappers. You can talk about the rise of Christian fundamentalism. You can tie it into this idea of culture wars. You can talk about so right off the bat, in our 1920s lecture, we talked about all that. What are ways American society is changing? We talked about new industries. We mentioned that. Radios, planes, automobiles, electrical appliances. Those dramatically change American society. And so just talk about how each of those change lives. Okay. You can talk about, movies. We go from silent films to talking films. Music, jazz, and big band become popular. So there's all kinds of changes in the 1920s. And, kind of talk about how those changes affected American life. Okay. Analyze the reality of Herbert Hoover's presidency and analyze the causes of the Great Depression. So those 2 questions are... Whoops, wrong. Wait. Is the handout. Sorry. Let me bring up the handout. Sorry, just a sec. I should have brought out the handout already. So those 2 questions, causes of the Great Depression, and then Herbert Hoover's policies. That's this handout. like I said in class, what are the danger signs of the U.S. economy? Technology, unemployment, depression, Europe. You don't have to talk about all of them. Just mention a couple and go into detail on them. So those are danger signs. You want to make sure you mention, too, I'll be looking for also, what's the context of the crash? And again, you don't need to go into all the details. That was just story to get you to kind of see the details of it. But what is the context of the crash, right? And so you can talk about that here. So you go over. So paragraph 1 would be the danger signs. Paragraph 2, what caused the Great Depression. And so you look at, what are the different interpretations of what got the Great Depression started. And we kind of mentioned more progressive historians blame, too little government intervention and speculation. Right? More libertarian historians, economics blame Federal Reserve policies. Not the government did too little, the government did too much. The government, well, in some ways, caused the environment to how the Great Depression happened. And so you want to deal with those issues as you were writing. Right? And so there's that. And then, Herbert Hoover. So you want to start myths of Herbert Hoover and just work your way discussing these things. Okay? And so just go down and talk about these different details. Hoover's New Deal. And you can mention this. Is the prevailing narrative completely false? Well, no. I mean, there's some validity to it, too. And these are some examples. And so just go. So in the Herbert Hoover, you'll start with how to make, myths of Herbert Hoover. So you want to talk about, the popular narrative has to, FDR is the hero, so Hoover is the bad guy. Secular history's distorted the narrative, and so I'm trying to correct it for you. And that's what I want you to deal with when you deal with on the test, is kind of what's the more accurate version of Herbert Hoover. Okay? And so you just go through and talk about each one of these things. As you're studying, there's some other things you can look at, and you're welcome to bring them up as well. And one thing I will look for is if you deal with the issues. A lot of students want to be safe and just stick with the traditional narrative of, Hoover evil, FDR good, let's pray to FDR. And so that doesn't fly here. We want to critique. We want to go to the primary documents and see what they say. Good. Next, so analyze some of the critiques of FDR's policies. Describe 4 New Deal programs. So that is on the Great Depression. Just as you're going through, what are some critiques, right? Like Glass-Steagall Act. We critiqued it right here. Okay? Relief measures, so you just pick a few of your favorites and you can talk about them, right? Some of the critiques, what's going on? How do you balance government intervention, Marxist economic principles, a lot of government intervention in the economy, where the economy starts picking the winners and the losers, and how does that distort a free market economy? So again, you pick a few of your reforms and talk about them, but then also make sure you discuss, right? 2 economists argue the NRA actually made unemployment 8% higher, right? And the Wagner Act, forced unionization, okay? So as you're going through, you can see, you'll be able to see kind of what are Hoover's policies, what are Roosevelt's policies, and how are they negatively affected? What are the critiques of them? And then also along with that, you'll just pick 4 and talk about them. On the critiquing Hoover's policies, you can use this slide too. Okay. In the popular history, you're told that they're complete opposites. Hoover did nothing. Hoover's the villain. FDR's the hero. FDR did everything. And then when you study it, were they really that different? They both maintained the Hawley Smoot tariff. FDR outspent Hoover. High taxes. Roosevelt expands a lot of Hoover's programs. And that's what's funny is like the traditional narrative, the popular narrative gives FDR all these credit for all these programs. Several of them were started by Hoover. You know, and they both felt that they were saving capital. And so on the question of critiquing his policy, you can talk about this. And you can also talk about this, how radical is FDR in the New Deal? You get it? With FDR, you have it kind of from both ends. Some say he was too radical. Others said he wasn't radical enough. Okay? And so, you can talk about these two slides as well. Right? Let's see here. So, analyze critiques of Hoover's policies. Like I said, that would be, right? That'd be this slide, that slide, and then you'd go back and talk about this too, right? Was he really that different from Hoover? No. Right. Were there some differences? Yeah, we went over them, right? There are some differences, right? On the handout, Is the prevailing narrative completely false? No. They are different. You're right. But there's a lot of similarities too, and so we want to make sure we recognize that. Next, how are fascism and communism both totalitarian in nature? One of the things in your popular history, remember, you're taught that fascism and communism are the exact opposite. They're not. And so you're taught kind of you're taught that way because a lot of your instructors are on the left on the political spectrum, so they're closer to they're closer to the communist side. So they want everyone. Oh no, fascists are the complete opposite, and there's a lot of similarities. They're both totalitarian, and so you want to see here. Define what is fascism. So this goes over, you talk about this table, how they're similar and different. How are they similar? Okay. So you're going to focus on these two slides. There are some differences, but they're similar in a lot of ways. They're not as opposite as some of your other instructors want them to be. They're not as opposite as your popular history wants them to be. So we'll talk about that. And then next, describe the issues National Socialists campaigned on and analyze how German society is attracted to their political platform. And that would be... So we're going to study National Socialism. So Stalin, Italy. And so we'll look at what are the critiques that National Socialists have about 1920s Germany. Okay? And then we want to get into, what does the race theory say about the German people? And this gets back to the progressive ideal of a new society. And you kind of want to make sure you hit on that. National Socialism is a progressive ideology in that it wanted to create the perfect society, the perfect German, the perfect Aryan, the perfect man, right? Just like Stalin with communism and Marxism, they want to create the perfect Soviet worker. You want to create a utopian society. And so National Socialism, you have the progressive ideal of creating a new man, a new nation, a new people, right? And so you tell race theory, how that gets into it. And then this is the big slide on, what are National Socialists campaigning on in the late 1920s and the early 1930s that is attractive. Okay. And so you want to focus on that as well. Okay. So remember, 200 200 words each question. I will look at, I do grade on, like, how you look at, like, I need to see my stuff. I know that students, I know that I share some things that students, get upset about because it's not the popular history. There's some things where I am arguing a different point of view for you that I believe is more correct. That I argue as a historian is more correct. And so I need to make sure I see that. I'm not going to mark down if I don't see some attempt to understand the different points of view. I'm sharing some different points of view here in this test section. Okay, you as a junior historian need to deal with that, okay, and argue it and talk about it. So there you have it. Have a good day and good luck on the test.